And just as I was just saying to Marco, so we should be recording now. Let me just open the windows because sometimes it will. I've had it before where it looks like it's recording, but it actually freezes, and then you lose your recording. But it doesn't look like it's having any issues, so I think we're recording again. All right, so the topic today is we're just going to sort of compare, like, we did a posting yesterday, and we're going to kind of compare where we were yesterday as to where we are today, and we'll look at some of the advancements that we've made. Um, yeah, so Marco is a community member of the placeholder coin, and so there seems to be some interest in the placeholder coin community, as some of the machine learning that we did in the program, in the coin, some of the machine learning and model training and stuff that we did there, we've been able to apply some of it over here. So I'm going to go back into the application and just run it straight, kind of out of the box. And you'll notice probably immediately, there are some simple differences. So that we've split the model panel, the workflow panels are separated. We've added a toolbar along the top, and we actually have several, like basically all the functions that are going to be possible to do through the system. We're going to try for the most part to bring these over here along there, and then on this portion here, when we reload the code, we want this screen to repopulate with the new source code folder, obviously. And so far, we're not having a lot of luck. We are able to bring up the code generally in a code window, and you can kind of like flip through the code, but we've not really been able to get it to switch over on the publishing side, and it has to do with some kind of a bug that is related to this component, which is a tree. They call it like a tree component, and so getting them to refresh can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. So anyway, simple little thing. We did build in sort of this daytime, nighttime kind of concept. Some people like it like that. Some people like this way. I prefer it that way. I think I mentioned the other day that I'd like to bring in, not now, but later, I'd like to actually bring in this kind of a theme, this color theme. I would personally, I prefer this, but that's my own preference. That's not something that I'm concerned about today. When there's a message. Oh, I'm talking here and I'm not even sharing my screen? Oh my God. You guys have to tell me ahead of time. It's going to show up on the video. It'll be on the video because I'm screen recording. But it won't. That last part that I was talking about, you would not have been able to see. I'm just an idiot. Anyway, so as I was mentioning, this is basically where we're at today. And as I was mentioning, so we've divided out these sections. Before we had the kind of like as tabs on the top, and now we've just split them into two separate sections. And we'll make these guys easy to move back and forth. As I was mentioning, some people prefer like to have like a day theme. Some people like a night theme. I like a dark theme. As I was mentioning, I would like to have this kind of a theme. I do like this theme, and this is actually a theme we can theoretically plug in the future. But I'm not really worried about themes right now. The main thing I'm worried about right now is getting these two trees. Well, this tree to reload, and then this tree to enable the building process to occur. Because the way that the program works, and Lisa, I mean, you've been there before, so you've seen it. You can attest to it. That when in the past, we've been able to build the models out here on this column here, and the schema generator will automatically build. What we did get rid of previously, you did have to publish. We still have the publish feature there, although now as soon as you create your models in this new sort of paradigm, it will automatically do the schema generation, and it will immediately update your API inspector, like instantly. So it just happens. Your documentation will be immediately updated as well, and then if you're switching between the code will also be like updated. Okay, as you go. Now the other tab that we added here, as I mentioned, we built in this might sound like a really silly, simple thing, but it's actually a really important milestone for us, which is that we finally, this was very difficult to pull off, but we did manage to get what they call like an embedded 2002 capable web browser, right? So it can stream video. It has all the capabilities of like a modern browser built into it. So I think generally like the idea will be that in this region here, eventually we will be able to put together kind of almost like a little university type area that will show people how to do specific things. So if they're wondering like, well, how would I do this? How would I do that? Then we can have like a fact area, and all of these individual videos that we're recording will be probably made available here. Well, they will be available here. And then hopefully, as we get a little bit further along, we should be able to start diving into like specific topics. If you're working on doing something a specific way and you want to be able to, could like build out a workflow a specific way, add specific components, we'll be able to address that over here in this help area. So I think the general idea or concept really is going to be so you're going to start with something like a single login, okay? Which I don't know if this will actually work because I haven't tried it, but might. Let's see if it will let me go to login.html. I think we covered this last time. I might have to put in like a maybe it's just not going to work. Okay, so that's not, this is not, it doesn't let you change the URL at the moment, but we do have the single sign-on. We did demonstrate it. You can refer back to yesterday's page. So it's the single sign-on would be like a single component. And so like on our login page, we want to have a CAPTCHA in the background, like a silent CAPTCHA, the opportunity to register or sign up. We want a silent date time capture. So these would be things that would happen in the background. Also a silent capture of the geo information IP, and probably also some kind of an analytics component. I think we have an analytics. I don't know where it is. Is it under custom, or we have it somewhere? It's a UI element for Google Analytics. Predefined forms. Anyway, so the idea would be that you'd bring over your Google Analytics, or if you're using, I think you mentioned a different one called SEMrush. Is that right? SEMrush. Okay, SEMrush. So yeah, I'm not whatever is people want. That's like what I'd like to try to include, because it's actually very easy to build these things over here. And then when they get placed onto a workflow, the way that we want this to work is like, so that if I select this workflow, ideally it's going to highlight this page and that workflow is going to show up. Okay. And this page that you're seeing here, the Prime Designer, this would basically like be the equivalent of like a palette. So, this, you could switch between different palettes in terms of like what you wanted. Um, if you're trying to say you want a different kind of a palette, different colors, scheme, or whatever that you want to be using for your application, you might be able to select this kind of a palette, and then that a palette will apply to your workflows. Okay, so in this case, I have a log out that has a workflow transition and also another date time capture, so we can see like when they left. We can see when they signed in. And then on our dashboard, this is just left empty, but maybe we have an introduction page. There's a Google Analytics on an introduction page. So this might be like your splash screen, okay, or your welcome screen. And you might have a specific CSS bundle or like a theme that you want to apply to that page. And then you're going to have a workflow transition that will branch off into probably either into a login or to a demo. I mean, maybe we'll be, you'll just be able to go and add like a new workflow for a for like a as you can see, this portion's not working at the moment, which I think I did mention that we were doing some remodeling, if you like, of this component. But the idea would mean you might have a demo page here where you want to like demonstrate something or whatever. But whatever your application is that you're trying to build, like we wanted to keep it fairly flexible. Now, right now, this is mostly focused just for like web front end applications. And the way that we want to be able to do this is that you should be able to preview your workflows here. Okay, those workflows will connect. There's my API inspector. So apparently it worked, but it went to the wrong. It didn't go as expected. So I wonder if I go back to, if I change this back to localhost. I'm hacking my own thing here. There's a little bit of a bug. 8081/API inspector index.html. That's not going to work, but then maybe when I come back over here, now, okay, there we go. Little bug. So this portion here, you'll define your models so that if you're, whatever it is that you're basing your application around. For example, I think Lisa, the example we talked about was like an application for like a plumber, right? So I'm sure there's plumber applications that are out there that allow like a plumber to have jobs booked and keep track of their invoices and be able to generate their tax forms and do all that stuff. I'm certain that all of these applications exist already. But what we're doing is we're making it we're lowering the barrier of entry so that anybody that wants to like go and into any of these directions can do that very, very quickly and easily. And it doesn't mean that you have to be, going after some commercial thing. It can just be, a certain personal project or whatever. And at the moment, the back end portions are all based on a RESTful API. But we are looking at, in the future that the front end does not have to be a web front end. Like it may be that you may be able to construct an actual application right at the front, again with no code, just dragging, dropping components, and then filling in those gaps with either what I'll call pre-prompted or pre-answered solutions that are templated from our different artificial intelligence integrations. So we pre-prompt them, and then basically we have a technique where we can recursively go and keep refining the answer, and have like basically a voting mechanism to determine if an answer is a good answer or not, or a bad answer. And so by using that process, as well as we have several data access object templates that can connect to these RESTful endpoints and allow you to connect. So that through you'll select your database type, and after you've generated the code, you're going to get your documentation, your API, your schema, and then the other area that I don't know that we've covered in recently, I think I've covered this with you, Lisa, is we also, now this is not, we don't have a screen on it there yet, but we also enable people to create their database schemas at the same time. So your database schema gets created and likely installed at the same time. So whichever, we may be having several different databases running in the background of your sandbox implementation, and whichever one is the one that you've selected, then your schema will be adapted so that it will be able to connect. And that's kind of the glue that connects the database to your RESTful API. And then all these front end components, anybody that's done any software development on the front end knows it's very, very easy to build front end JavaScript friendly components that can communicate with a RESTful API and display the information through like an AJAX format. We're expecting all of these components will basically be, you'll be able to essentially, they'll be snap-on. So based off the schema that's here and the UI UX component, if they are capable of snapping together, they will. So for example, like if you have an input field and it's a last name, and you've got a last name field here, and this is a string, and this is compatible with a string, these two should be able to match up. And you should, so that if you're submitting a form and you've got these fields specified on your form, it will correctly be able to invoke this the login, for example, or the create a new user, a sign up, so on. I don't know if there's any questions. Otherwise, I'm happy to just wrap up early. And I'll just go back. I'm going to stop sharing, unless I'll turn sharing back on if there's any further questions. But I think mostly what I wanted to do today is just kind of demonstrate the big jumps, because every day that goes by, it's they're fairly significant jumps, and I feel like we're getting to the point now where we're starting to be able to use the tool to build the tool, and so that's speeding up the development process. So, for example, I won't go into specific details, but there's more than one component that was written entirely by the tool today. So the tool itself is now a minor author of the tool, and I'm still the major author. But I suspect by the time the tool is finished that I'll be the minor author. But if there's any questions. Well, it's not like it's writing itself. I mean, that's an exaggeration. It's more like I'm prompting it to write parts that, and then it can go and fill in the blanks. Hmm. Well, just to give you like some brief background. So, um, the very first customer, well, okay. So you've met Logan, and the applications that Logan was trying to build. Look, I'm going to try and keep this under 3 minutes. The applications that Logan was trying to build was for like such a wide variety of clients, and basically digitizing um, like 10,000 different PDF documents, and like, so there's a lot of these huge government organizations that send everything around still by fax machine, if you can believe that. I mean, they're getting a little bit more savvy now, and they will allow you to like fill out a PDF and then lock it, docu-sign it, and send it back, flatten it, rasterize it. But then, on the other end, they either have to pay like Adobe Premiere, like, an enormous sum of money in order to be able to extract the inputs into those PDFs and store them into a database in a like friendly format. And not just that, like Adobe, I think is probably the biggest player in this space. But they're also like they're so heavily embedded in their own PDF technology and their own legacy technology that they're really stuck in a box, and we're not stuck in a box. And so one of our first customers really, um, they were just they had clients would call them up, ask them for a quotation. They would email them a PDF. They would have to print it out, sign their signature, get somebody else to sign it, and then they would send it back. They would photocopy it, make put it in a file folder. Some of this stuff they're going to have to do anyways. However, we think with the combination of blockchain, okay, that a file folder is not really necessary if you can pull an identical copy of a document, like in perfect detail, from a distributed network. If especially if the network is robust and large. So it didn't start out as sort of like a crypto project, but so as soon as now that this particular company, they had gone and hired a whole development team that was working with Swagger and working with OpenAPI, and developing out these PDF forms and integrating it. And they'd spent over the course of a year, I think it was, I won't go into discussing exact numbers, but let's say low six-figure numbers, but not very, very low six-figure numbers in terms of like how much they'd spent just to develop this like basic PDF automation software. And we were able to we were able to create their entire PDF model for one of their most complex documents in less than 30 minutes in a demo. And this was before we had any UI at all. We just basically um, used the model building component, which is at that time was just command line, and we use that to build our models with the attributes. We just ask them some simple questions like, a phone number. Does a phone number ever contain letters? No. Okay. And how long is the longest phone number? Does it contain dashes? What's the format? The regex format or whatever. So we just asked them very, very simple questions, and we were able to generate output an entire working database-backed RESTful API that allowed them to store their Uh, like basically, they could email the customer a link to a page that looked exactly like a PDF, identical. You can't tell the difference really. And they would just fill it out as if it was a PDF. It even has a signature form at the bottom. And as soon as they sign the signature form on the bottom, it would just store it on a blockchain and save all the data into the database. And we did that for their first PDF in, like I said, half an hour. Did not take very long. So because of that, we were basically able to just close a good deal. It's very easy for us to say, okay, well, we want $16,000 for an annual license to use the software. As many times as you want. You know, and it did everything they wanted, so they knew that they could do it for their other forms, and they've since done, I think, all of them. And they've only needed custom integration on one particular item, and that particular item was because it had to interface with a government. It had to do a government lookup of license plate. Now I'm probably getting into too much information, so I won't go into extra detail on it. We are over time, but does that give you any information? Does that answer your question? Like where the demand is coming from? Yeah, so what we've been able to do is telescope, like I don't know if that's the right word, but telescope inward the cost and time that it takes to build something. So rather than having somebody sitting there hand coding everything, we can just like rapidly build them. We're calling it model down or model driven development. So you don't it's not there's not code involved. It's just model development, and as long as you specify your models with sufficient accuracy and unambiguous, and you don't have any specialized integrations. And we have a third-party company that we're in discussion with that is a very well-known company that can do very high-quality integrations. Then you can build something very fast. It's a 90 to 95% solution out of the box, and it's a no code, all code. So there's no code involved in writing it, but you have all your code. You get all your code, and you can modify it, do whatever you want with it. So it's very different from like your traditional no code application where they just give you this program and it's like a black box and it does what you want, but nobody knows how it works. And if you need to change it and it can't change that way, then it's impossible to change it. Here, we're generating the code on the fly based off the model down development, and then you have the code at the end of it in whatever language you want. And so you change it however you want. You can either change it through the tool or you can change it independently. And so that's the way that we want to go. So we're just going to roll out sandboxes, give them to people that want them to try them, to use them, and each sandbox should include both a Git repository as well as an interface to the application and a staging environment that you can publish to. Not a production environment, but a staging environment. And the sandbox is not going to come at a cost. It's just going to basically be, first come, first serve. And then if there's more demand than sandboxes we have available, then we'll just lottery them out. Or we'll allow people to timeshare them or something like that. Do you have any competitors? There are competitors, and we figured we're over to the timeline now. There's a whole bunch of people running in this direction, and I think that this software, I think we're at the beginning. So actually, I think we were one of the first adopters to go in this direction of bringing together code, like enterprise level code generation with artificial intelligence. And a front end to connect it all together. We're sort of like one of the first um, entities to do that, but there are a ton of other companies that are coming in. Some of them have deep pockets. I think, especially now that we have our own embedded Chromium browser, and we have some of the other like hard things figured out, that we've got at least a 6 month advantage over most of the competitors. Not all. Some of them are just not going to be able to. They're just going to get bigger than us probably, but so far we're just spreading word of mouth, and you know the most important thing is this is not going to be a 5 year business. This is going to be like a 3 or 2 year business. And after that, I'm sure that AI will just do the entire thing. So we're just looking to exploit that brief period of time, I think, between the point at which human beings are still involved in doing programming and getting paid on $150,000 a year, and we're going to try and replace that with like some combination of cheap stuff, cheaper labor, or individual labor and artificial intelligence. So that's kind of the business model. I'll end it now. I'll stop recording, and then I'll just open if there is any private questions soon as